Alright, we need to talk about this little guy. People call it a gimmick, a novelty, something you only use once in a while, but honestly, I might never travel without it again. First though, we've got a flight to catch. What's up everybody, Jaron Fritz, aka Frizzy Visuals. I've been dying to test this Pocket Dispo lens I picked up a while ago, and this trip to Charleston, South Carolina with my girlfriend Keith felt like that perfect chance to finally put it to work. I shot the entire week, street photography, wedding moments, and everything in between with nothing but this one lens. Nearly 700 final images later, it turned into the ultimate real-world test. I'm taking you behind the scenes of this trip, showing off when I used it, where it killed, and where it fell short. By the end of this video, you'll know if this little lens deserves a spot in your camera bag. Alright, why Charleston? Key's childhood friends Nate and Olivia were getting married, the perfect excuse to tag along and test out this lens. So we're down south for nearly a full week, surrounded by a bunch of childhood friends, ready for some days packed with fun and a couple of, "Hey, Jaron, can you come take a picture of me?" Well, of course I can. I'm basically contractually obligated at this point. But before I get their shots dialed in, you already know I had to sneak in a few test frames for myself, so I wandered onto this tiny balcony, set up the cam, and asked little bro to show me the money. I wanted to see if we could lock in a solid detail shot too, so naturally I set it up on this extravagant tripod. I was honestly surprised by how much I like these shots, and if this setup works out, it could solve one of my biggest headaches bringing my camera when hanging out with people: the sheer size and cost of the gear. In the past, I'd roll up with a full setup: camera, battery grip, 35mm lens, and a flash, which not only looked totally over the top, but also felt ridiculous, and a little stressful when trying to squeeze into a tight spot with a group. This setup just needed my camera, a tiny cheap lens, and of course, a flash because I am a flash demon. The camera was easy to throw over my shoulder, but the flash remained a notable challenge. Never mind, I put Key on flash duty. Enough of the setup, let's get down to brass tacks. I ran this thing through 5 completely different lighting scenarios, and each one pushed it to a new direction. Sometimes it held up surprisingly well, other times, yeah, not so much, but that's what made this the ultimate real-world test. I'm talking harsh midday sun, flash in the dark, a night out with friends, wedding ceremony group photos, and even a 500-person yacht dance floor party, and somehow this tiny $50 lens kept up. Well, most of the time. After a dinner that could have taken a chunk out of a college tuition fund, we hit the streets looking for a halfway decent spot to shoot. I wanted to see how this thing handled low light flash in a real world setting. So for our first test, we stumbled on this little courtyard with some flowers and a fountain, and figured, yeah, this'll do. We got some solid frames, and honestly this lens handled the color flash better than I expected. The tones felt natural and the colors didn't completely blow out. When we zoom in though, you'll notice the skin tones and highlights get a little soft, but hey, that's a look now, right? Everyone's chasing that 2006 digital camera vibe. This gives you that, just without the AA batteries. The next day brought a new challenge, shooting in broad daylight. I knew I'd have more chances for flash photography later on, so I hit the streets of Charleston early to see how this thing would hold up under some harsh midday sun. Probably one of the more visually pleasing alleyways I have seen. On King Street, after my winterized pale skin started to melt, we stopped by a couple art studios. The first had some really cool paintings, none of which I photographed, but the second had these stunning black and white landscape photos. And you know I had to post up like I was some kind of art connoisseur, just some real cultured behavior taking place here. I've been hyping this lens up for about 5 minutes, but this is where the price tag really starts to show. Without flash, I really wasn't feeling most of these shots. I know I showed you a couple that looked okay, but in reality, I took about 50 of them and only kept 6, and 2 of those were indoors. I was honestly pretty disappointed in this. It seemed like if the sunlight even touched your frame, it was cooked. You gotta stick to the shadows and try to get something usable from there. Sure, I was discouraged now, but we ended up getting some better daylight photos when we were on the yacht a couple days later, but for now, let's talk about a night out using flash. At this point, most of Key's friends were in town, so we're gonna run through a couple of these on screen. Compared to the daytime, this night was a gold mine. I had about 130 keepers. Nighttime flash is definitely this lens's playstyle, and honestly, if you're not zooming in crazy, it's hard to tell these apart from a 35mm G Master. Safe to say I was genuinely impressed. My sneaky favorite part about this lens on a night out is you can hand it off without worrying about someone botching the focus. If their camera experience stops at an iPhone, you're still good. Since it's fixed focus, it's basically foolproof, so just let them cook. Oh, right, the whole reason we're in Charleston, the ceremony. Not much from this part. I wasn't about to be that guy messing up the pro shots with my own camera from the seats. Sometimes you just gotta sit back and let the pros cook. So picking back up after the ceremony, we headed upstairs to kick it, and you already know, when the ladies are dressed up, group photos are a non-negotiable. This time we were in some shaded daylight with a little flash to help. The results? Solid. Nothing standout, but definitely usable. One of the highlights was this girl doing watercolor portraits of couples. Key and I hopped in line and thought it was a pretty cool touch. After Nate and Liv did the wedding things, we were back on the group photo duty, and with this lens, that's turning into a guaranteed hit. The wedding night was a blast, and more importantly, the cake was elite. Kinda wild that Nate chose to cut it with Olivia instead of me. I didn't take it personal in the moment, but now that I've had some time to reflect, a lot of sleepless nights. Heartbroken but not defeated, I did what any reasonable person would, boarded a yacht at sunset. The reception was the next day, and I needed a final moment with this lens to bring it home. Daylight had let me down previously, and this was my comeback tour. And yeah, flexing on a yacht, another non-negotiable. After cruising past houses straight out of the Notebook, we made our way to the top deck to soak in the view and snap a few. I loved how the colors were looking on these. Warm for the skin, but had that blue in the background to make it feel vibrant. After the sun went down, I captured one of my favorite shots of the entire week. I'm not sure what exactly makes it stand out. Maybe it's the blown highlights, the tones, but it carries that soft, nostalgic feel. The black and white version also gives magazine. And right after taking that shot of Mercedes, she returned the favor and took one of my favorite photos of Key and I. The sailboat was a paid actor, of course. We pick up a bit later where the sky started looking good in the background. You can also see that 5 to 7 foot range is a sweet spot for this lens. These all look really sharp. We were at that point in the night where the older folks started saying, "Wait, what song is this? What are they saying?" And the younger kids started migrating to the dance floor, and I love those chaotic flash moments, so I was curious to see how this lens would hold up in the mess. Surprisingly, this lens handled the chaos really well. The 28mm focal length kept me in the action without losing clarity. Out of 350 total shots, I held on to 180 of them, and the results definitely had that candid paparazzi style motion I was hunting. It is also fun just to scroll through them like a flip book, which happens to be the only type of literature that I consume now. A couple individual shots I want to highlight happen to all be flipped to black and white. This lens allows a very realistic film emulation. There's natural vignetting, soft edges, and just enough drop off in the corners. Once you add a little grain, it feels legit, and that's why personally I lean towards more of those black and white edits with this lens. That's what this lens does great, but let's circle back to that biggest weakness that I had hinted at earlier, broad daylight with no flash. This shot right here, the house, the water, cooked. These group photos of the boys, sadly, also cooked. If there is no flash and you're beyond 10 feet from your subject, it really is hit or miss. If you're not controlling the light, the results get pretty rough. But when the conditions are right, this 3D printed lens punches way above its weight. For $50, it gave me a look I genuinely love and a way to shoot casually without dragging the full setup around. It will never replace pro glass, but for travel, moments with friends, and fit pics, it's definitely earned a permanent spot in my glass rotation. Like and subscribe for more travel videos. Leave a comment if you plan on picking this lens up. Until next time.